Hello everyone and welcome back here to an all-new episode of The Light Between Us, which is a special exclusive to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in our partnership with Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay. We're at Chick-fil-A Cicero on 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, New York. You see the sign behind us. You can't smell it on your screen, but I can smell the fries. We're here with Katy McMahon as our special guest. Katy, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Katy, what brought you to Chick-fil-A?
So, it's actually a funny story. I have a couple connections here in Cicero as far as my parents and Jimmer. So, I was 17 at the time, junior in high school. I was looking for a full-time job, well, part-time at the time. It was summer. And I was currently employed in my parents' business. It was called McMahon.
Okay.
I worked as an office assistant, and not particularly my favorite thing to do, sitting in an office, but I was on a search and my mom brought up, she's like, you should work at Chick-fil-A, and I was like, I don't know, like a bunch of people from school work there, and it's just kind of, it doesn't seem like it would be the best for me at the time, that's what I thought. So some time goes by, I eventually caved and I called Chick-fil-A. I was like, hey, do you guys, are you guys hiring or anything? And they told me, we're actually only looking for people over the age of 18. And I was like, okay, so not me. And my mom, who works with FCA, with the Syracuse athletes, at the time she was working with some high schoolers, and she had an event, and Jimmer was there because he does a lot with FCA.
Yeah.
And they chatted for a little bit, got to know each other, and my mom was like, hey, my daughter called and was wondering if you guys are hiring. Like, are you guys hiring? And he's like, yeah, we're always hiring. So he, was like, hey, like, here's my number, tell your daughter to call me and we'll set up an interview. So I met with Maria and Jimmer and was hired on the spot. So that was pretty cool. Just inching up to 4 years here now. So October 2018 is when I started, and it's been an incredible journey ever since.
So you get hired on the spot. It's been almost 4 years that you've been here, and you're not just any old team member, right? Because Chick-fil-A has a special family in and of itself, and then on top of that, you're in the management world.
Yes.
What is it like to be a manager at such a young age, which is not something that is atypical of Jimmer? Many of the management staff that he has at Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay are comprised of people that he believes in, that are the future of Chick-fil-A and the future of the country.
That's very true. It's definitely been quite the ride, I must say. I got promoted to manager, when was it? It was just October of last year.
Okay.
It's been a handful of months for me, and Jimmer can attest to this. I have said no to him many times about becoming a team leader and a manager.
Okay.
But I cannot tell you how thankful I am that I jumped the gun and I, caved in and I said, like, I'll take it on, because I would not be the manager person, literally everything that I am right now, if it wasn't for, that forced growth. And being a manager here is honestly, like, it's not only beneficial, but it just makes my heart grow for younger kids especially. Me being younger, I mean, I'm 19, but it's enough to be able to relate with high schoolers and, those older than me. And I can't tell you how many stories I have, how many hearts I've been able to cater to here. There's days where, the kids go home and they tell their parents about their day, and I want to look at it as I want them to go home and say, my manager Katy made me feel super appreciated today, and she made sure, she's really looking out for me. Like, that's always my goal every time I'm here.
You said something interesting that I don't know if I've ever heard before. You said, I cater to hearts. you worded that very uniquely. What does that mean to you?
So when I say that, I think of like, I'm not looking at, the numbers. Well, I am, but that's not my number one thing that I jump to.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the well-being of my team members. I'm worried about, their mental health and their capabilities here operationally, because that's where it starts. Like, yeah, you do need a good leadership team. You do, need aspects of team members who can fulfill responsibilities, but what starts with like guest experience and being able to grow your team members is pouring into them, and I want to be able to cater to them in that way so they can affect guests positively. And especially at the age they're at, there's so much going on in their life. They're figuring out college, they're figuring out friends, the list goes on, but I view it as a way to promote that positive growth, and like I said, great teamwork starts with the heart, and then it just spreads, with the attitude, just everything.
And coming here from Katy McMahon inside of this edition of The Light Between Us, exclusively on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and our partnership with Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay. You're 19, but you're talking in a way that I would be moved by if somebody in their 50s was talking that way. Why are you so mature and eloquent in how you speak? Because leadership is something that I've seen good leadership, I've seen not so good leadership. 19 years old, I've seen better leadership terminology, verbiage, and kind of comfort in your ability to talk about it than I've seen from some people in their 50s or 60s. So where does it come from?
Well, I gotta give a special shout out to my parents, obviously,
Shout them out by name.
Yeah. Beth and Mike McMahon.
Beth and Mike, how are you?
Honestly, them, big part, but I grew up being they always called me the flower child, like I was super independent, never really had big groups of friends, or even I just always did my own thing, and I think that forced myself to, I wouldn't say like grow up quicker, but expose myself to a higher sense of maturity, and I've always looked up to people who are more mature than me, and I think that kind of really poured into me as I grew up. And it's hard because, you want to be a good example, you want to maintain that level of maturity, but sometimes, people look at you as like boring or not acting your age, but honestly, I'd rather take that than someone who's immature,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would. I definitely think maturity is the better route to take always.
Right.
So, and you may, and I can liken it to that. I mean, you do things on your own. You feel like you're on a path by yourself, but ultimately, I would rather pave the way than just follow some concrete path that somebody made that's not necessarily good.
Right.
So we talk about the path, right? The way, the truth, the life. And one of the prayers I pray all the time, especially when there's moments of strife or adversity, is I always say, God, guide me and guard me. Guide me toward where you want me to go, toward you. Guard me from what is not of you. So your faith, we talked a little bit off the air that it's strong, it's been strong. Share with everybody the role that faith has in your life.
Well, it plays a huge role in my life every day, especially being here. There's been times where I kind of step back and I'm like, what can I do to grow my faith in every aspect of my life?
Yeah.
And I learn something new every day, whether it's, how I treat other people or just even within myself. It's something that it's a work in progress, just like with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think, everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think, everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, I think everyone could use a little extra push in their life. And, being a pastor's kid, there are times where I feel called to, you know, provide like nourishment to those who maybe aren't as passionate or faithful.
Yeah.
And I think that not only causes growth in that person, but myself as well.
You say, again, a unique choice of words, nourishment, right? You work at Chick-fil-A where you are feeding people, but you're talking about feeding people with faith.
Right.
How do you, on a daily level, here at Chick-fil-A and beyond, try to nourish those that may be hungry?
So, honestly, it's through the smallest of things. Like, for example, if I'm writing, you know, an email to someone, like a business email, I'll just, like, close it with blessings, Katy. And it's just little things where they're like, oh, that's really cool that she said, you know, instead of, like, have a good day, you just say, like, take care.
Yeah.
And I try to use, you know, through my words mostly. I feel like that's the most effective way, especially when people, they want to listen, they want to take it in. And sometimes some people, it's harder to crack that shell than others, but as far as outside of here, through church a lot, I'm trying to get more involved with that, and, you know, I'm on the worship team right now, so one of the most rewarding things is playing in the worship team, and then afterwards someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, like, that really touched me today. So even, like, sometimes you don't even realize it until someone tells you, you know.
What is it, when you talk about the worship team, what do you do?
So I'm the piano player and vocalist right now.
And you, I mean, has music always been a part of your life?
Yes, it has. I started playing the piano. I was taught the piano, I think, in 3rd grade. That's the furthest I can remember. And I'm mostly self-taught, actually, just because I figure it's easier that way, you know. Especially piano teachers nowadays, they teach you a very, I wouldn't say like, it's kind of like old-fashioned, with, you know, the notes, and I can't read sheet music, so
Yeah.
I prefer, you know, the self-taught sort of thing. But
It's funny that you say that, because my mom sings, I sing, and she had to teach herself how to read sheet music. I still don't know how. So you just kind of go with
It's
whatever
so
you think is
hard,
right.
yeah.
But it's I think it also challenges you to uniquely find your way,
right.
because you create your own notes, so to speak. You create your own place in the world. So, I mean, that's a beautiful part of it. I think faith and music go hand in hand a lot. And, I mean, obviously Chick-fil-A does. So you've surrounded yourself really at all times with faith. Do you have, outside of working at Chick-fil-A, outside of music, do you have something else that you do for yourself that kind of can set you back to zero when you need it? When you have gone through a lot of adversity, when you're stressed out, when you're having a day where your faith is challenged a lot, what do you do?
That's a good question, because I feel like if I'm not, you know, here, I'm usually at home. Just, honestly, I like to call it, like, recharging.
Yeah.
One of my number one things is just, as lazy as it sounds, I'll just lay in bed, you know, keep it real low. There are times, I honestly, right now especially, is one of my favorite things is just spending time outside. I've always been, you know, a huge nature person, and which is funny because I don't really like to hike,
Yeah.
but I love being in nature because it's just, it's kind of like looking at God's creation. And,
Flat path nature.
yeah, basically.
But there's a lot to that, because it's funny how one walk can change you, and then 2 walks, and then 10, and then 40,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you don't know what to do without it. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, we get caught up in life, I get caught up in it, and then you see a bird land on a tree that the bird's probably landed on 1,000 times, but that day that blue jay landed on the tree in front of your house. And I just have those moments where I stop and I go, God is really cool. Like, it's just so unique that, I don't know, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, don't overlook the bird sitting in the tree. And I don't know why that's one of the things, but that's one of the things that sticks out to me.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and to keep it simple, keep it faithful, and keep it focused, what's your advice to people out there who have lost their faith, who have dealt with loss, which usually challenges faith, or in the last few years, just with the pandemic and everything, have found it really hard to find a place of comfort? Because I feel like instead of looking for God, people look for somebody to play God, which I find very ironic. So what would be your advice to that?
One thing that pops into my mind when you bring that up is not losing hope. I feel like there's always, the first thing is running away, and they lose all that when they run away.
Yeah.
And also just to not have fear, because I know a lot of people probably have the mindset, say they left church and, maybe at that church people look down on them now, and they're afraid of, coming back and being judged, or, there's definitely that fear there, but for the most part, that's just, the evil in your mind speaking. I even, in my life, I have plenty of examples of, I fell short many times, so does everyone. And one of the hardest things is coming back up from falling. And I guess the best mindset is to think, okay, once I get back on my feet, I'm going to be right back where I started. And God is forgiving, He will forgive you. And it's as simple as just taking that step. It's hard, it hurts, trust me, but the outcome is just so much more worth it.
Yeah, and I think like you said, it's hard to get back up, but it's also the most rewarding thing to do, is to get back up. And I have realized in life that I used to get really mad at adversity, and not that I don't have my moments, but I love adversity now, because I don't know, when you throw me in the fire, I get excited, because I'm like, y'all thought I was going to get burned, but I always get bigger in the fire.
Yeah.
So I kind of embrace the fire to a point now where I thank you for throwing me in there, which I think is terrifying to fear itself, to the things that are not good, because, the devil wants you to be afraid of fire. But when you use the fire to grow, there's really nothing left to burn you. So in a closing piece here, if you could impart any knowledge or wisdom when it comes to facing a fear that you faced, or having a moment where you really felt like people say sometimes, that evil's knocking on the door, how did you get through it?
A good example that I can bring up real quick is my experience with change in my life, and especially as of recently, just these 2 past years. I attended college for a year.
Okay.
And then I decided just this past summer to take a gap year. And that gap year turned into developing a career somewhere else in my life. And one of the scariest parts of that is facing the consequence of change, as well as, fear in the unknown. And I think, my mindset going into it is, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know where I'm going. I've talked to so many people, and they always tell me, just follow your heart. As basic as it sounds, it's just going to lead you into the places where you belong. And it caused me to kind of almost open my eyes in a way where change is okay. It's okay if you're uncertain. You're going to go through so many phases where you're figuring this out, and then this, and so many things will pop up. But honestly, it made me almost less fearful in a way, kind of accepting the change, accepting the unknown, because now I know what I'm gonna do now, obviously, but in the moment it's scary, and it takes a lot out of you growing up, especially. And that's why I'm so thankful for my job now. It really kind of put myself in this new perspective that, my life's changing and that's okay. And I'm uncertain, that's also okay. And just accepting that has led me very far.
Coming from Katy McMahon here in this edition of The Light Between Us, airing every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora exclusively. We want to thank Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay for all that they do to work with us. We're here at Chick-fil-A Cicero at 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, New York. You can also go out to Chick-fil-A Clay at 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. For now, from an incredible story from somebody who put it very well. You may have a future in broadcasting too.
Oh, thank
Person
you.
with words. So, Katy, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We'll talk with you all soon. And as always, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, God bless, no stress. Do your best. Talk with you soon.